Hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Architects. Please subscribe now to get the latest ancient history news and independent research from around the world. The subject of this video is something often brought up on social media when discussing the ancient pre-pottery Neolithic site of Göbekli Tepe, and that's comparisons to other megalithic sites around the world. One comparison that has really gained some traction over the years is to the stone enclosures on the Balearic island of Menorca. These structures are the product of the Talaiotic culture, a Bronze and Iron Age society that lived on the easternmost Balearic Islands. The culture first appeared at the end of the second millennium BC. Early monuments on neighbouring Menorca include layered tumuli and associated hypogea, which are thought to be associated with burials. On the smaller island of Menorca, tombs called navetas appeared at the end of the second millennium BC, built with Talaiotic techniques, but it's these later sanctuary structures that have got people comparing the civilization to Göbekli Tepe. Such structures are the most iconic ancient structures on Menorca. They are found at sanctuary sites, being enclosures with generally a horseshoe shape and a large central T-shaped structure resembling a tall table. These large central structures are called taula, which in the Catalan language actually means table. Although the exact date of these structures is unknown, due to the rate of weathering and erosion, comparing them to the datable structures on the Balearic Islands, and the studied evolution of civilization on Menorca, they are very likely to date back to the first millennium BC. Some people narrow this down and say they were made between 500 and 300 BC. They likely had a religious or astronomical function, maybe both. I can do a more detailed video on the Talaiotic culture in the future, but what I'm looking at in this video are these sanctuary complexes and their apparent similarities to the Göbekli Tepe circular enclosures. In Menorca, we see these generally circular or U-shaped enclosures with a stone wall made of irregular blocks of stone. Pillars are positioned at intervals in the walls, and in the centre is a giant T-shaped Taula. Sometimes, but less frequently, there are more than one. At Göbekli Tepe, we see circular or oval enclosures with a wall made of small irregular blocks of limestone. T-shaped pillars are positioned at intervals in the wall, and in the centre are two T-shaped pillars facing each other. The similarities between the two types of enclosure are obvious. I can understand why people do make the connection, but the fact the circular enclosures of Göbekli Tepe and those of the Talaiotic culture are separated by 8 to 10,000 years of history is really too large an obstacle to overcome. Göbekli Tepe is well preserved because the limestone structures were purposefully buried. The stone was therefore protected, and we are pretty sure of the date of the site. Nobody really questions it. The sites in Menorca have never been covered over, the construction styles are clearly Talaiotic, the weathering and erosion of the sandstone taulas is not too drastic, and everything from geology to cultural context points to a 1st millennium BC date. So, we have no major issues with the dating of either site. But still we're left with visual similarities. Circular enclosures with pillars at intervals on the perimeter, and also one or two T-shaped pillars in the centre. But as well as looking at the similarities, we should also look at the differences. Generally speaking, the Menorca enclosures have one central T-shaped pillar, but Göbekli Tepe has two. The Göbekli Tepe T-shapes are made of one piece of stone, but the Menorca pillars are made of two, a vertical pillar and a stone on top. Sometimes the central Taula is even made of 3, 4 or 5 stones. The central T-shaped pillars of Göbekli Tepe are ornately decorated, and are also anthropomorphic. The Menorca T-shaped pillars were not carved, although some examples do show a linear feature, but this could well be functional when it doesn't look to be decorative. Stylistically, the sites are very different. The construction style of the T-pillars are different. The material used is different. the age is drastically different. So why is there this obvious similarity? Well, it could all be down to function. T-shapes are even used today in construction for supports. The shape is very stable, and it is a likely hypothesis that the Göbekli Tepe and Menorca structures did have a roof when they were made. The pillars are T-shaped for support, meaning they have their shape for functional reasons. But what about the fact there are pillars on the perimeter that are spaced out at regular intervals? Again, it's the logical way to build an enclosure that's supporting a roof. You have large pillars at regular intervals for support, as well as one or two essential larger pillars in the centre, which is likely the highest part of the roof. Of course, the pillars around the perimeter also supported the enclosure wall. It will be far less stable without them. The people of ancient Anatolia did develop and they did migrate, and humans do carry their knowledge with them, passing it down from generation to generation. Ancient Anatolians did migrate into Europe as well. But by studying Göbekli Tepe in isolation, we know that the site itself evolved from circular enclosures, 10 to 20 metres in diameter with T-shaped pillars, the central ones being more than 5 metres tall, to what we see a millennium later, when the shape of the enclosures changed to more rectangular and the pillars were also smaller. So, if the ancient people of Göbekli Tepe evolved their own construction styles and designs during the course of their own civilization, if there is a link to Menorca, why are the Menorcan structures more like the earlier structures of Göbekli Tepe? And why are they not like the later examples? It doesn't really make any sense. Throughout history, humans have learned how to build. Sometimes skills and expertise are handed down from generation to generation, but structural concepts can develop independently. I think with the case of Göbekli Tepe and Menorca, both cultures independently developed an efficient way to build large important structures intended to stand the test of time. Perimeter roof supports in the walls and large central T-shaped pillars is logical and functional. The same structural concepts are still used to this day. But concepts and construction styles can come from human critical thinking and they can develop independently. Yes, we can all see the similarities between Göbekli Tepe and Menorca, but in my opinion, it's the differences that show that these two cultures and structures are unrelated. 8 to 9,000 years of time is simply too much, and we don't see a gradual progression through that time. At this stage, to prove a link between Göbekli Tepe and Menorca does require far more compelling evidence. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Ancient Architects. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and please leave a comment below. Thank you very much.